Continuando con el desarrollo de este Congreso Internacional, sigue la siguiente ponencia internacional, la cual trata de políticas de gestión de residuos y elementos claves jurídicos, ejemplo de reglamentación eficaz, lecciones aprendidas de la Unión Europea. El expositor es el ingeniero Torsten Müller de Fraunhofer, Alemania. El doctor David Muñoz me acompaña para leer la semblanza de nuestro próximo conferencista.
Muchas gracias. Ya esta es la última antes del coffee break, pero creo que ha sido muy interesante lo que hasta ahora hemos escuchado. Cada uno de ustedes tiene su agenda. Este es apenas el primer día. Necesitamos que puedan estar pues, con nosotros los otros 2 días. Aquellos que desean el certificado de participación, es importante que puedan participar los 3 días previstos en el evento. De igual manera, dado que tenemos un poco de delay en el tiempo, la parte de preguntas y respuestas la vamos a posponer para el final del evento o en el coffee break. Si alguno de ustedes se desea acercar a los expertos, pueden hacerlo también. Hay mucho que aprender de ellos, créanme. Bien, Torsten Müller de Fraunhofer también es ingeniero en gestión de residuos y tratamientos de sitios contaminados por la Universidad Técnica de Dresde. Desde el 2010 trabaja como científico y gerente de proyectos también en Fraunhofer en el grupo de reciclaje y eficiencia de recursos. Está a cargo de proyectos financiados a nivel nacional e internacional, así como proyectos bilaterales con la industria. Su principal área de trabajo es el desarrollo de estrategias de reciclaje y sustitución de flujos de residuos domésticos e industriales, y la definición de cascadas de materiales para un uso más eficiente de las materias primas. Su ponencia de políticas de gestión de residuos y elementos claves legales, ejemplos de regulación efectiva, lecciones aprendidas de la Unión Europea, es algo que para nosotros reviste de especial interés, dado que es el marco en el cual nosotros podemos aprender para que esto sea una iniciativa a largo plazo con nuestras instituciones. Con ustedes, Torsten Müller de Fraunhofer.
Thank you, Darby, for the kind introduction. Okay. Can we somehow enlarge it, or is it the PDF? Okay. Yes. I gave you some PowerPoint presentation as well, if you want to use it. Okay. Sorry. We're talking today about the waste management framework in Europe. You can see here a slide showing the single elements in the European legal framework. Number one is the general waste legislation. What means, for example, if you want to treat waste properly, you have to ensure it. You have to ensure that it stays in your countries. That's why, for example, in Europe there exists a waste shipment legislation. As well, you have to have a definition. What is waste? And if you find a way to treat it and recover recyclables from it, you have to have a definition how to get out of this, or you have to define a way how to get out of this waste definition point. So how can I define an end of waste status, for example, for copper cables, or aluminum and iron scrap. Then there is there are different frameworks for the waste operation, and defining proper standards how to run a treatment facility, which environmental standard need to be given, how to run a landfill, how to have minimum emissions to the environment from your processing plants. Of course, and Isabella mentioned it, we have as well a different number of special legislations for different waste streams, which you see in the bottom here is, you can probably not read it. One is for the end-of-life vehicles, for example. We have one for packaging, we have one for batteries, and we have a classification for hazardous waste, which interacts quite a lot with the REACH legislation, which means restriction of the ROS legislation. What is this? Okay, are you moving or is me? Can you go back? What is it? Thanks. Which interacts more or less with the specific product legislation, which defines which hazardous materials or which materials are allowed to be in products. For example, there's a ban involved on cadmium. Now we can go to the next slide. Yes, just a brief overview. We saw that today the prevention part is what Isabella mentioned before. This is the main part. Waste that doesn't show up is the best waste. Just some numbers on the European Union from 2014. Approximately 2.3 billion tons of waste showed up, whereof the main part is from construction and mining activities, which is as well in different projects quite heavily approached by now. Manufacturing, waste and water services, and only number 5 is the household. So it's a very large volume, but the weight itself is a smaller share. Nevertheless, it's very important. And currently, recycling struggles with a proper collection and the framework for the collection. The better you collect the waste, or the more separate you collect the waste, the higher is the chance to have a proper quality in the extracted raw material afterwards. Yes, we mentioned the extended producer responsibility before, which is aiming at implementing or giving back the charge to the producer of the single products. This has been implemented especially for material streams with a certain environmental risk. For example, cars that have different liquids in that should not end up in the environment. For example, batteries which contain a lot of heavy metals. But as well for packaging, because plastic has, or in general, not just plastic, but the packaging fraction is a lot of value material, and the plastic fraction is what has, or is causing quite some environmental trouble right now. You see the beaches. And trying to channelize this is the main aim of an extended producer responsibility, and making people and the industry pay for it is even more important to encourage them to somehow ensure that their products are recycled or better recyclable. Okay. There are different types of EPR, which I will not take too much time for. Mandatory types are mainly where the legislative part says you have to take care of this material, you have to take back it, you have to take it back, you have to pay for the recycling, and you have to define the process how it can be recycled or treated. And normally those EPRs have as well specific quotations for the recycling rates. Okay, we have a general European waste management plan which normally sets just the framework, and this framework needs to be implemented in the national legislation, because in Europe we still have the independent countries which work together, but the European Union just gives the framework. So every country in Europe has to prepare a waste management plan, and in Germany it's organized in a way that the government of the German government puts it down on the single federal states, which you see, for example, on the right-hand side here. The picture of my federal state, which is structured in smaller pieces, and the federal state defines the single treatment facilities. Those are the black spots you see. The single treatment facilities in the close-by area for the specific different material waste fractions. Okay? The aim is shortest distances for the transport to reduce emissions, and to ensure that especially hazardous and domestic waste stays in a close-by region, to ensure it's not just exported in other countries. Next slide. Okay, just a short overview on the collection system. You see several different potential collection points. In this case, it's shared collection. On the left-hand side, you have something to collect packaging in supermarkets already, where people can unpack the packed food or stuff and leave the waste already in the supermarkets. You have different collection containers for glass, for clothes, for packaging, for paper, and you have close-by areas where you can bring bigger amounts. Construction waste, for example. And this is a landfill that is closed already. Next slide. And the individual part with containers in every household, where you define for the different fractions to be collected a certain frequency of collection, which is very important. And with now all these smart systems that are implemented, this process is as well getting more efficient, because containers are just emptied once they're full. There are some exceptions, for example, organic waste that should not stay there for weeks or something like that. But that's one of the processes to properly treat the material. One important point is the bulky waste, which actually in Germany is a big discussion currently. In some regions or in some cities, you're still allowed to just dump it on the road, and twice a year there's a plan when they will pick it up. And you just put your stuff on the things you want to get rid of on the road, and they will pick it up. What causes a lot of traffic and export of this kind of material, especially to Eastern European countries, that are really going through the city and through the roads and collect different pieces of that and take it to other regions, but there is no control. So right now they change it to cards you have to fill. You tell them exactly which items you put on the road, and you pay accordingly. Respectively, twice a year it's free. Next slide. Just a short overview on the different fractions that are separately collected already. Glass, clothes, metal. The picture on the right shows the Christmas tree collection every year, which is quite clean fraction in the end. The next slide, please. And something that links quite well to what Isabella mentioned. We're not perfect, but the slide or the picture on the right shows you that Europe at itself is on the right way. The lower part shows you the landfilling. So in general, landfilling is decreasing, recycling is increasing, incineration is increasing, but as well, and that's something very important, composting is increasing too, what means that less organic material as well ends up on landfills. But not every country is on the same level, and it's something that needs to be changed, and that's what the different countries are working on together right now to somehow get on a similar level of waste treatment, and especially if we go to the next slide. There's what we learned from the current situation is that, of course, you can focus on different fractions and the recycling of different fractions, but the difference there is that one country still has, for example, Bulgaria, they still landfill 80% of their waste, which is quite a lot. And at the same time, high recycling rates don't mean that everything is recycled, especially for packaging waste. Just the simple collection means it's already recycled. So in the end, there is something more needed, which we see on the next slide, and that shall be the end of my presentation, which is, yes. The next steps are needed. So on the one hand side, you need to ensure that, like it's in Germany, packaging waste, for example, is not just collected and incinerated, but you retrieve the valuable materials from it. So the European Commission takes the next step. It's proposing recycling rates for the different waste fractions. For example, municipality waste 65% and packaging waste 75% until 2030. The reduction of landfilling in general to 10%. And the most important part, that's why it's marked red, a simplified and harmonized way of defining recycling as itself. So when is the material recycled? Is it recycled when I collect it, or is it recycled if I really bring it into a new product? To follow this, you need as well concrete measures. What are my targets? How do I get there? And this, in a harmonized way between the different European countries, is a big challenge, and that's what's currently ongoing. And what recently has happened is that the European Commission, which I somehow like, even though it's just a tiny piece of the waste fraction, they are tackling quite useless products and one-way products from plastic to ensure that we don't have to care about the recycling because it's not there anymore. Mainly, they're talking about plastic straws, they're talking about plastic knives, one-way forks, one-way plastic plates. They selected the 10 most pieces that have been found at the beaches. So they made a study, they checked the different pieces that they found at the beach, and they said the 10 top ones have to be omitted in the future. And that's currently under discussion, and that's a step in the right direction. That's my last sentence now. The most important part, the real step to the circular economy, will be if you encourage and force the producer of the primary resources to somehow bring back the material in their material stream. For plastic, that means not the producer of the fork, but the producer of the plastic itself. For example, German company BASF is one of the biggest producer of chemicals. If they take it back in their primary stream, we can avoid using oil, and it's their decision to just regranulate it or to use it as oil. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much. Nice picture of our institute. And my contact details, in case of any question, please feel free to approach me in the breaks. Thank you very much.